Hey, it's Rod at Cool Guy Barbecue, and what we're going to do today is an area favorite. I live in a community that's made up of Czechoslovakian heritage and German heritage, and what we're going to make is Czech pork and dumplings with sauerkraut today. All right, so I got myself a nice bigger pork tenderloin roast, and the first thing we're going to do with that today is we're going to rub it with some olive oil. Okay, so I've got that olive oil on both sides of the tenderloin, and then what we're going to do is we're going to make a rub. Now, when you make Czech pork and dumplings, one of the key ingredients is caraway seed. Caraway brings out a real distinct flavor in this recipe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some caraway. We're making a rub right now. I've got some garlic powder, some salt, and some black pepper. And what we're going to do is we're going to shake this up and get it good mixed. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my rub. I'm just going to kind of sprinkle it on top of the tenderloin and making sure I get it really good and covered with the caraway rub here, and you can kind of see what we're going to do. Now, I've got my smoker this morning set at 485 degrees, and I've got a pan, a cast iron skillet out on the smoker already. And what we're going to do first is we're going to brown this meat up and get a good crust on it, and then we're going to back the smoker down and let it smoke, and then we're going to also add some onions to the mixture as well, and I'm going to put it in a pan, and you'll get to see all that in just a little bit. I'm just going to burn up this rub here, and there we go. Okay, so to set this up, I've got my skillet in here, and I've had the skillet on at 485 degrees F for a half hour so it gets good and hot. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my olive oil, and you can hear that it's kind of sizzling. And I'm going to let that kind of just sit a sec. Move it around the pan a little. So now I'm going to sear the pork tenderloin. And what it says is 3 to 4 minutes. So I'm going to let it go for like a minute and a half, and then I'm going to start flipping it around out here. We're going to get a nice crust on it. Okay, so it's been cooking about a minute, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip it over. And I'm just going to kind of keep flipping it till I get it nice and brown, and I'll show you that when I'm done. Okay, so I've got the pork tenderloin browned up. It took me cooking this about 10 minutes to get it browned up. So I'm going to put it in this pan. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to saute some onions in this pan. I'm just going to take this in the house for just a second. Okay, so now I've got that leftover kind of grease from the pork tenderloin. So now I'm going to add some onions to this. I'm going to saute these onions up. And then in a minute I'm going to come back and I'm going to add some dark beer to that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put those pork tenderloins back in this pan. I'm going to take the grill temp down. I'm going to let them smoke for 3 to 4 hours. That's what I'm guessing anyway at this point. Okay, so I've been sauteing the onions, and you can see how they look, and they look good. Now I'm using a shallot is what I'm using today. I like them because they're just a little bit stronger than a normal onion. Now what I'm going to do is I poured a cup of that Mississippi Mud. It's a dark beer. I'm going to pour this in here like this, and now I'm going to let this sit for probably about 2 minutes. And while this is going like this, I'm going to take my grill temp now down to about 225, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to add those pork tenderloins, and then I'm just going to let them go on a slow smoke. Okay, so I've got the pork tenderloins all seasoned up, and now what we're going to do is I've got my beer onion mixture here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these back in, And now I'm just gonna let them sit in this and smoke. And we're gonna smoke these up to a temperature of 145. And I don't know, it's probably gonna take 3 to 4 hours, but I'll let you know as we go. And again, we're cooking in the cast iron kettle, so that's kind of a new experience for us as well. So we'll kind of just tell you how it goes as we go along. Stay tuned. Okay, so I'm out here at the grill and it's been a little over a half hour, so I just wanna show you how the pork tenderloin is cooking. And it's got a great smell with this beer. And the temperature is up at around 128. So we're going up for a temp of 145. Now I'm gonna go in the house and I'm gonna show you how to make the dumplings that go in the pork and dumpling final recipe. Okay, so what the formula is when you make true Czech dumplings is it's 1 cup of mashed potatoes to 1 cup of flour. And so what you do is you mix that up into a bowl just like I did here. I just been mixing that up, getting it good. And then you double that. You throw in another cup of potatoes and then another cup of flour. And then what you do is you mix this up a little bit more, and then you're gonna add 1 egg to this mixture. And I kind of move the egg around so it kind of, when I put it in there, it drips in. And then you mix that all up. And then in a minute, once I get this mixed up, I'm gonna show you how I make them into little balls. Okay, so I've got my mixture all done, and I got it all mixed up. And then what you do, and it works best with your hand, is you just take and you form these into 3-inch balls like this. And then you just take over here to the boiling water and you just drop them in. And then what's gonna happen is eventually they're gonna float and they're done. So I dropped the dumplings into the boiling water and they're just supposed to float and not float at the bottom. So here's what they kind of look like. And then what you're supposed to do is, after a little bit, cut one in half and then make sure they're done. I've been cooking these for about 5 minutes. Okay, so I've got that tenderloin sitting there smoking out on the grill in the cast iron pan. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make up the final roasting pan for the pork tenderloin. And what I'm gonna do in a little bit is I'm gonna bring it in, I'm gonna cut it, and I'm gonna add it to the top of this. So what I did is I got 2 cans of sauerkraut, 1 sweet and 1 regular. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna drop those in to the bottom of the pan first. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix it up so that I get a little bit of the sweet and the sour together. And I'll lay it nice and even in the bottom of the pan. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start cutting these dumplings so that they're really thin. And what I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna start taking them and layering them in the pan just like this. So stay tuned, in a minute I'll have the pan all covered and we're gonna come back and we're gonna add the pork on top, and then we're gonna take it out, we're gonna put it on the smoker and just let it kind of all ferment together. And then we're gonna have our Czech pork and dumpling recipe. Okay, I'm out at the smoker and we've been cooking about 3 hours on these pork tenderloins in the pan. I flipped them a couple of times just to make sure that they're okay. And you can see I'm gonna be right just, there's 145. That's what I wanna get them to, is 145. And that one's at 145. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take them in the house and I'm gonna cut them up, and then I'm gonna put them over the dumplings and sauerkraut, and then wrap them up and bring them back out and let them cook for a while. Okay, so I've got these beautiful pork tenderloins right here. So I'm gonna take one off, and what I'm gonna do is I'm going to start to cut it into small pieces, and you can just see how it looks on the inside with a little bit of that smoke look to it. And what I'm going to do is going to take and I'm going to layer that just like this on top of this dumplings and sauerkraut, and then I'll come back and show you when I get it all finished. Okay, so here's what it looks like all cut up and in the pan. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this with foil, and I'm going to go put it back out on the smoker for a while. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those drippings from the pan and I'm going to make some gravy. So stay tuned. Okay, I raised my grill temp up to 335. The grill temp's at 335, so I'm just going to put this back on, and I'm going to go in and make the gravy. And when I get the gravy all done, when I get close to finish, then I'm going to throw the gravy on top and just let it all kind of melt together, and then we'll be ready to give it the Rod Teats moment of truth. Okay, now what we're going to try and do is we're going to whip up some gravy out of these, out of this leftover juice from the pork tenderloin. So I'm going to put a tablespoon and a half of cornstarch in this container. Then I'm just going to add 1.5 cups of water. And I'm going to whisk this up. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my mixture to this pan. I'm going to let it start to just get a little bit warm. Okay, so I've got my cornstarch and water heating up, and so what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to start to add all this stuff too and see if I can get a gravy out of it. Remember, this would be that beer and the onions and the meat juice. So I'm going to start stirring it up and see if I can get it. It looks like it's actually starting to thicken up and make a nice gravy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to dump the rest of that in here, and I'm going to stir it up, and stay tuned. I'll show you when I get it so it's thick. All right, so I got the pulled pork. I've been cooking it out on the grill a little bit. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to pour this fabulous gravy over the top of it like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it back up and take it back out for about 10 more minutes on the grill, and then we're going to have the Rod Teats moment of truth. Okay, here is the Czech pork dumplings and sauerkraut all finished. And if you recall today, we started with pork tenderloin, we seared it, we rubbed it with a caraway rub, we cooked it in a dark beer chalet sauce, and then I showed you how to do dumplings, and then we lined a pan with sauerkraut, dumplings, and pulled pork, put it back out on the grill to cook, threw some gravy over the top, and this is what we have. So now it's time for the world famous Rod Teats moment of truth. I'm going to try and get a little bit of everything. So I got a little bit of the sauerkraut and the dumpling here, and I have a little piece of pork on the side. Grabbing a little piece of pork right here. And this is what it looks like. And you can see that we got a little bit of smoke ring on the pulled pork. And the whole thing about this is we're doing it on the pellet grill. That's part of the fun. So let me start off. First of all, start with some dumplings and sauerkraut. It is so good. It actually melts in your mouth on the even the sauerkraut picks up a little bit of a smoky taste. So now I'm going to try the pork. The one thing is you get caraway. That's kind of the kicker to this. You get caraway. It's so good. It's got a nice smoky flavor. It's got a nice bite. You get that caraway. It's just like the Czech restaurants around here make. So once again, if If you want the recipe, go to my YouTube channel, and you can find it on Cool Guy Barbecue. YouTube channel is Cool Guy Barbecue. Down in the description link, I'll have the recipe. All you can do is you can print the recipe right from the description. I gotta tell you, anytime you get good smoked food, you get a little bit of aftertaste, and that's what this has. It's got a great aftertaste. But Cool Guy Barbecue, and you can print the recipe, or you can always email me at rodteets@gmail.com. But this is Czechoslovakian pork and dumplings with sauerkraut.